Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening, verse number 22. Athapikamam etam te Prajatyaitaravannyalam Yatha mam nati rochanti Muhurtam pratipalaya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. Translation. Even though it is not possible to repay you, I shall satisfy your sex desire immediately for the sake of begetting children. But you must wait for only few seconds so that others may not reproach me. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. The henpecked husband may not be able to repay his wife for all the benefits that he derives from her. But as for begetting children by fulfilling sexual desires, it is not at all difficult for any husband unless he is thoroughly impotent. This is a very easy task for a husband under normal conditions. In spite of Kasyapa's being very eager, he requested her to wait for a few seconds so that others might not reproach him. He explains his position as follows. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport.
Kashyapa Muni is requesting Mother Diti to wait for a few seconds only, so that Kashyapa Muni is not led into something which angers Lord Shiva. It was at the time, inauspicious time, the evening time, Sandhya time. That time the horrible looking ghosts accompanied by Lord Shiva moving in the atmosphere, in the environment, and Kashyapa Muni was afraid about offending Lord Shiva by engaging in the forbidden act. Kashyapa Muni told her that I will satisfy your desire for the sake of begetting children, but you must wait only a few seconds so that the others may not reproach me. And as we know, finally we'll see that she could not wait, and Kashyapa Muni also succumbed to her request, and that was the cause of a bad soul coming into the womb of Mother Diti. As we have discussed several times, the regulated process of sense enjoyment or the regulated process of grahastha life are so many fine details are there, what is to be done, what is not to be done. And just by engaging in sex in the wrong time, one is bringing all inauspiciousness. Even though it is between the husband and wife. So such are the intricate rules and regulations that is given to mankind from the Lord with respect to the different types of sense restraint that is expected for a grahastha, brahmachari, vanaprastha, sannyasi, etc. So by following those restrictions of those ashramas, one can get gradually purified, and at the same time by not following that, it is considered to be sinful. So sinful activities sinful activities are not at all conducive in any manner to spiritual life. First we have to be sinless, only then it is possible for the living entity to engage in devotion service, pure devotion service. Sin is like jumping into the fire. Just like what happens if you jump into the fire or put your hand into the fire. The body will burn. So in the same way, our consciousness, if it jumps into sinful activities, then we are harming our real self. That is the reason why Krishna, he warns us against this formidable force called lust. And he calls it a very, not an ordinary enemy, a formidable enemy. Desire for sense gratification, of all that, the desire for sex, a very formidable enemy. And it is also, Krishna also says that this is a nitya vairina, eternal enemy, and jnana vijnana nashanam. It destroys jnana and vijnana. So many different ways the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself has instructed humanity to keep away from this lust or to control the lust. And He has not simply given us to control the lust, He has given us the transcendental knowledge. So we have to, in order to control this formidable enemy or in order to deal with this, we need to have knowledge as well as mercy of the Lord. On the spot mercy of the Lord as well as knowledge. Knowledge is also mercy of the Lord. Whatever the Lord has given in Bhagavad Gita, the transcendental knowledge, that how the soul is different from this body and how the subtle body and the gross body constitute the total system here. And the lowest body is the senses, then the mind, then the intelligence, then the false ego. How these things have to be controlled. That also Krishna gives us the guidance. So we need to remember the knowledge that Krishna is given in the Bhagavad Gita to deal with this formidable force. That is condition number one. We have to have that knowledge. We have to know the situation. What is the situation? With that situation of who we are, if we are identifying with the body, then it is very difficult. So first is to understand the situation. Who all are involved in it? In the right perspective. The soul is involved, the super soul is there, the soul is there. Covering the soul is the intelligence, then the mind, then the senses. So when you are in a fight, you should know who all are involved in the fight. Is it not? Otherwise you don't even know whom you are fighting. You will be fighting somebody who is your friend also, isn't it? So you need to know who are the enemies, who are the friends. So the Lord is saying that I am seated in your heart, Suhurdam Sarvabhutanam, I am your real friend. So we have to remember we are talking about when lust attacks, the force of lust attacks, how one should deal with that. One has to first understand what Krishna is saying about this lust. And then one has to pray to the Lord, who is also participating in that situation. There is no situation in the world where the super soul is not involved. The Lord is there along with the soul. And only by the desire to replace lust with love for the Lord, it is possible for one to successfully overcome lust. Only then one can purify gradually, and that is, Prabhupada has told us, that is exactly called devotional service. Only by devotional service is love. Practical or devotional service in practice is called practicing love for Krishna. So unless we practice love for the super soul, it is not possible to give up lust. Lust is nothing but love for experiencing love outside of Krishna. That is lust. We are all Sachit Ananda. Ananda means everyone likes to experience loving exchange. Everyone likes sense pleasures. So this sex life or sex pleasure is something which combines these two things together. Loving exchange and sensual pleasure put together is a terrific combination. To overcome this, is not easy without the mercy of the Lord. Daivi esha gunamayi mama maya dhuratyaya. So most important factor we have to remember is, unless I am helped by Guru and Krishna, the Guru, by his external instructions, he has given us so many directions in this matter. Then the Paramatma is a Chaitya Guru, he is in our heart. So by his mercy, mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha, we can situate ourselves in knowledge and not go into forgetfulness of our position. We as spiritualists, as those who are practicing Krishna consciousness, we have this advantage of having this knowledge that Krishna has given. And especially because we are chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it makes sense to us to at least intellectually understand that I am not this body. That this body is a covering, the mind is a covering, it is non-me, and I am different. So one has to resist this force of lust somehow or the other by different methods that Krishna has given, the Guru has given, that the Guru gives within the heart. One has to actually detach himself from this pleasure. This is important. By vairagya, practice of vairagya. Abhyasena yogena vairagyena cha. By practice and by vairagya. Vairagya is nothing but detaching pleasure from the situation. That is vairagya. So we have to practice that, because we have pasted pleasure in that situation. That is the way the world is created. That is the way the material world is created. Man is attracted towards woman, woman is attracted towards man. And there is a purpose for that. Now if you want to go higher than that, there is a purpose for settling in this material world. If one can engage in that pleasure, but that pleasure has to be engaged. Even for that, you have to engage according to the way the Lord has instructed us to enjoy. And ultimately, as far as we are concerned, ultimately we have to come out of this complete pleasure idea. That is our path. Our path is to understand that the real pleasure is, the real meaning of pleasure is giving pleasure to Krishna. That is the meaning of pleasure. That is what we are also engaging in devotion service, means engaging in activity to give pleasure to the Lord. Even in our japa, every day what we are practicing is giving pleasure to the Lord, incarnation. So the Lord is seated in our heart and is continuously awaiting our response in each situation. And if we give pleasure to the Lord, that is called devotion service. If we engage in, then there is a false ego or ahankara coming into picture, lusty intelligence. I will enjoy. And this is a constant thing that the devotee who is practicing bhakti yoga is constantly. He is saying no to the ahankara and saying yes to please Krishna. One has to practice that. One has to first say in any dangerous situation, he has to call out to Krishna and say yes to Krishna. Not forget him. And then say no to maya or false ego or illusion. And by saying so, by practicing that, continuously our mind becomes purified. And our taste of pleasure is pleasure of giving Krishna. Giving pleasure to Krishna and not about taking pleasure. And that is the process of devotion service. Practically every day what we do for the service of the Lord, for the pleasure of the Lord, Guru and Krishna. That is our constitutional position. That is actually our constitutional position. It is not in our present conditioned state, it looks like tapasya, to give pleasure to the Lord and to resist pleasure to ahankara. It looks like a austerity. But actually ultimately it is constitutional to feel pleasure, to give pleasure to the Lord. That is the soul is there, false ego is there. So we should understand, the moment we are taking pleasure for ourselves, then we are covered by the false ego. And we are serving the false ego. We are serving the false masters. We are serving that which does not exist. In illusion we are serving. Whereas the Supreme Lord is seated in our heart, the one who really exists. And we do not want to please him. So this is our conditioned life. Marginal energy, the living entity is, he has to make a choice to constantly serve the Lord and become free from sin. So sin, along with sinful activity, it is very difficult to make advance in spiritual life. The Lord is very kind, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very kind, Srila Prabhupada is very kind. By their mercy, they still keep us in devotion service, but we have to stand up and fight. Continuously we have to fight against this force. By taking positive association of devotees, positive association of Krishna consciousness, positive association, not eating bhoga, all these kind of, so many subsidiary supports are there which keeps our body free from that lust. In fact, the most powerful force in this lust is actually possessiveness, possessive pleasure or lauding pleasure. If one actually gives up lauding tendency, of course it doesn't go so easily. By understanding the entire picture, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, Supreme Controller. The lauding tendency naturally, by years of practice of devotion service, that the lauding devotee becomes not so lauding. He becomes submissive. He becomes submissive to his attitude will be very contemplative and submissive and not lauding, because he knows everything belongs to Krishna and everything is controlled by Krishna. So lauding actually comes down. When lauding comes down, automatically this sex desire also comes down. This lauding tendency is what amplifies the sex desire. Which is not there, you will start seeing. That's a different subject matter. But what is important is to understand that one has to continuously struggle. And when the Lord sees in the heart that this devotee is serious about changing a standard of pleasure from self-pleasure to pleasure of giving pleasure, that is the constantly we have to do that. Then the Lord will free us from this imprisonment of sex desire. The sex desire is an imprisonment. Craving for Preeti outside Krishna is an imprisonment. Sex desire is basically, it is craving for Preeti outside Krishna. That is actually at the root level. It is not even the physical pleasure. Because as I said, the Jivatma is Satchit Ananda. Ananda means there is sensation, pleasure, no doubt. But it is a loving exchange. That is what is the jivas crave for. So by forgetting Krishna, who is a perfect source of all Preeti, who is actually even now, let's say as devotees we are practicing Krishna consciousness, one whose worth of receiving maximum Preeti in our life is the Lord. We may not see with our eyes, but by the Guru and Krishna, that's where the Preeti is deserved. Our love is deserved there. That we have to contemplate. If you contemplate and if you understand, if you comprehend and meditate on that fact that there is only Guru and Krishna in my heart who is loving me. And my love should go there. We cannot keep quiet. We have to love someone. The living entity cannot keep quiet. You have to love someone. It is one of the constitutional pleasures of the soul. Sat, Chit and Ananda. So we have to love someone. That loving has to be primarily at the level of the Lord, transcendental level. On the other side, this side is the material energy, on the other side is the Lord. Material energy is the material covering, and the soul, beyond the other side of the soul is the super soul. So that is a key point that binds us to the spiritual world. That is why it is said that unless one develops love for Krishna, or one practices love for Krishna, it is not possible to give up this attraction for opposite sex. Because you want love. You'll throw it out everywhere. One can become sober only if one cultivates this knowledge about Krishna is our real friend, Krishna is the real Lord, He is my real lover. That's why He is seated in our heart. He is not even far away. This idea that it's only in Krishna consciousness this understanding is given, that the Lord loves you, really loves you in the sense He is with you. How to realize that statement, Suhurdam Sarvabhutanam, that He is actually my friend. How to realize that? Even when you engage in sinful activities, even when we engage in activities of sense gratification, it's not that the Lord is angry, He is our friend. And He is thinking, how this now, my devotee is wasting his life and time now and creating a future bondage for himself. The Lord is actually feeling sad. He is not angry. He is feeling sad. It's not that Lord is okay, I am angry, I punish you for sinful act. No, it's independently that act. Three modes of material nature are acting independently. It is very impersonal. Sinful reactions come very impersonally. Now the Lord is saying, okay, now I have to, this devotee is doing sinful activities. Now I have to help him with the sinful reaction also. Because he is committed to help him. Is it not? So he tries to give you knowledge in your heart. Because you are trying to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So it's not that the Lord is angry. The Lord is actually compassionate. He is a personification of compassion. And He is seated in our heart. But we are mischief makers. We suffer for our own mischief. We are in this material world, every action has a reaction. That we have to remember. So this conscience that not to put ourselves in fire and burn ourselves, that is called sin. When we become free from sin and chant Hare Krishna, you progress like anything. At amazing pace one will progress. No doubt it is a formidable force, Krishna says. At the same time, Krishna has given a solution. Curb this formidable force, Krishna says. He doesn't say it's a formidable force, you cannot curb it. The formidable force, it is not a small force, and this is the way it is. He explains all those things in detail. One after the other he explains in a way in which one can understand the situation at least. After understanding the situation, by His mercy, one can actually stop this influence of lust upon us. Only Krishna consciousness has a fundamental solution to conquer lust. As far as Mayavadis are concerned, there is no actually even absolute motivation to be lustless. Whereas we understand why we have to be lustless. Because we have love, and our perverted love has to be purified, and therefore lust is. It's not that we give up lust and we are empty, no. Lust is a misapplication of love of God. So I want to situate myself in love of God. By curbing the lust, I am not losing something. The false ego, when you deny sense gratification to the false ego, the characteristic of false ego is that it will feel incomplete. If you engage in sense gratification, after knowing that this is not to be done, this is against, it does not please the Lord, then the real soul feels incomplete. That sense of incompleteness of the soul is very important. So constantly the devotee has to fight the sinful tendencies in us. That is the fundamental basis of Krishna consciousness. We all want to serve Prabhupada, we want to serve his mission, we all work very hard. But at the bottom, this has to be attacked simultaneously. Engaging in service is purifying. Of course, in the midst of all our weakness, we are engaging in service. That is why it is keeping us going. One has to understand, one should not think it is useless. In fact, that is what is protecting us. In spite of so many times we fall down, why are we still in devotional service? It is our devotional service. Why are we still in this process? Because the Lord is with us, you are engaging in service of a pure devotee. But we have to accelerate our process. One has to understand that there is no substitute there is no other way other than becoming sinless. At least the 4 sins that Prabhupada has given, gross sins, we should become sinless in devotion service. The importance of that has to be very much impressed upon our mind, that we have to become sinless. That is one of the stepping stones. It's an immediate goal in our life. Immediate goal in our life. And then so many wonderful things are there in Krishna consciousness, which takes us to another world of pleasure or experience. Any questions? जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।